talking about the 10 warning signs of dementia. And I'm using the word dementia versus Alzheimer's because I think people get confused about the word dementia. So if if a doctor says you have dementia, then by right you should ask what kind. Because the word dementia is like the word cancer. So if a doctor says you have cancer, the next question is going to be what kind do I have? So it's important to ask the doctor what kind do I have? And don't let them just say, hey, it's just, whatever. Because now, as of just 2 weeks ago, the FDA just authorized a blood test to be able to figure out if you do have Alzheimer's. Oh. So that's brand new, but it's in conjunction with an MRI and things like that. So we'll talk about that. So the 10 warning signs, and I'll pass these out, and you can maybe share because there's more people here. So when you think of the 10 warning signs, and of course I'm going to use the key exchange. Okay. Everybody loses their keys, right? And of course, when we lose our keys, we start to panic because we think, oh my gosh, is that a sign of dementia? Yes, it can be a sign of dementia that if you lose your keys, for instance, you're going out of the house, you have your keys in your purse or your keys in your wallet or whatever, and you put them down because, oh my gosh, I forgot something in the other room. So you go into the other room, you get whatever, but by the time you get back, you have no memory of where the keys are. So it's literally that you have forgotten that you put them down from going in from one room to the next. We'll go in, for those of us who don't have dementia, we'll walk into the room and we'll retrace our steps. And we're able to retrace our steps. We can't do that if you have dementia. So now it is so important to start looking at what are those signs, right? So one of them, of course, is the keys issue. Is it interrupting your daily life? What do you think that means?
You can't go anywhere.
That's right, you lose your keys yourself.
Yeah. So and also it's like forgetting doctor's appointments. Okay, get a call. You had a 10 o'clock with us. Really? Okay, and then you're having to reschedule. So these are type things that kind of make a difference. By the way, if you guys have any questions as I'm going along, please interrupt me because I like that, because then I know what is on your mind and we can go in those directions to help. There's so much information.
I was gonna say.
This may be stupid, but I don't lose my keys because I put them in the same place. But my phone, I carry around with me. I'm going to go to the bathroom, I'll set it on the counter. Then I'm gonna go do whatever, and then I forgot that I set it on the counter. The phone is my biggest problem.
But if that's the only thing, right? So,
But it's annoying.
Well, of course. But if you also, you're able to retrace your steps, right? Not being able to retrace, where did I put it? Where was I? And also you gotta realize too, stress will play havoc with memory. Being in menopause will play havoc for women in memory. And unfortunately with dementia, it tends to hit women the most. We're still not sure as to why that seems to be the case, but it is the case.
Could there ever be an isolated case, like you do lose your keys, you really don't remember? Or once that starts, then you see the other signs?
Could be. All right, so let's take Alzheimer's because that is the most prevalent form of dementia. About 80% of people who have dementia will have Alzheimer's. And that's why so much of the focus on treatments and all that kind of stuff is on Alzheimer's. and not necessarily on the other dementias. So Alzheimer's is making inroads in the brain up to 20 years before the first symptom shows. So a lot of people don't know that. So it's like when I first started working for the association and I heard that, it's like, oh my God, if I'm gonna have it, it's already happening. You know, and that's why getting those early detections, or diagnosis is so important. So, and especially now when there is a treatment for Alzheimer's, there is an infusion. Sorry, that's all right. So it's a matter of understanding the logistics, right? And most of the time, when somebody is diagnosed with dementia, they're not in the first or the second stage.
Yeah.
They're in the third or fourth. And there's only 7 stages. So people have been showing signs, and of course, we take it for being, oh, it's stress. Oh, we're aging. Because so many people over the age of like 70 and 80 can have some kind of dementia. So we're chalking it up to that, but in fact, it really has nothing to do with it. Although aging is the #1 problem with getting dementia, right?
What is the difference between just memory loss and dementia?
Well, dementia is like it interrupts your life.
Right.
It's progressive. I think when you're having memory issues, sometimes you have to go back and look at, okay, am I under stress? Stress is a big factor, and it can play havoc with your memory. Having another health issue, having medications that can cause things like that. That's why it's so important to go to the doctor and to be able to ask those questions. Now, in reality, there was a law that was passed probably 5-6 years ago that when you go in to have your yearly physical, you're supposed to be having a memory test. Your doctor, at the age of 50, it was supposed to start, and it's supposed to be a baseline. Now, what the problem is that the doctors are waiting for their patients to say, hey, you know, can we check my memory? And the patients are waiting for the doctor to do it. Well, you know, the thing is that you need to be proactive about your health. That's important. Because so many doctors don't really know a lot, the primary doctors, even though they're seeing it very prevalent in their practice. So let me give you a statistic. In Santa Barbara County, Alzheimer's is the 4th leading cause of death. Okay. In California, last year it moved up from the 6th to the 5th, and in the United States, it's the 6th.
And is it age population, like a Santa Barbara population is older than?
But in Ventura County, it's the 3rd leading cause of death.
Okay.
And I know, and I'm not sure about here, but I'm gonna make a guess that it is, that they're only talking about Alzheimer's. They're not adding the other dementias. So what we deal with is Lewy body dementia, frontal temporal lobe dementia, vascular dementia, and of course Alzheimer's.
About 10 years ago, I asked my doctor, should you check my memory? I think I've been losing my keys and stuff. And she said, well, I can, but if we test you and there's a problem, we have to notify the DMV. So I said, okay, never mind.
Yes, thank you.
That is true, but in my work, there are so few doctors that actually do it. And that of course is a concern. And now, in January, DMV passed a new law that if you're over the age of 70 and you have a good record, you don't have to take the test again.
That's right.
That's a concern.
Can you tell us about what the memory test is? It's a short-term thing, right? So like, is that something that we could sit down with a friend and go, hey, let's test each other?
Well, and there's stuff online where you can test your memory. There's so many things that are available. People do that all the time. And then you can go into your doctor. Now, my doctor, oddly enough, had been testing me for years. And I remember when he first started doing it, not picking up at first that he was actually testing me, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, wait a minute, why is he asking me these questions? You know, and it's like, ooh, he's testing my memory. And he started when because I've been seeing him for years, since I was kind of like in my mid-50s. I'm now in my mid-60s. So he definitely has a baseline as to what my memory is like. So it's a matter of being more aware, and especially when you're dealing with yourselves and your loved ones, as to, okay, what seems to be the issue? What am I forgetting? You know, and I think one of the biggest points for me when I had it is that I was working at Chico's many years ago down at Paseo, and I remember going up to the parking lot to try to get my car, and I couldn't find my car. I couldn't even remember where I parked it. And I remember that fear of where is my car? And at that time, how I got into all of this is because my mother had dementia. So my mom had what's called mixed dementia, so she had more than one. She in fact had I know, when the doctor told me that, I about flipped, because I didn't even know you could have more than one. So that was a surprise. Most of it is two. So that's what, you know, you do. So standing up there in that garage was kind of eye-opening, because I began to realize, it's like, oh, this is what my mom's going through. You know, and I had to take a deep breath and say, now wait a minute, let's step back. You know, look at memory, you know, try to take some kind of, you know, what was on that floor? You know, was there a crack in the wall or whatever, to kind of help me to get there. But that's what happens with people in those early stages, is that it can be very subtle. And as we, as family members, may not take it seriously, when in fact, we should really start taking it seriously. Somebody?
Yeah, I just wanted to share with you that a number of years ago I had a friend who was quite elderly, and I didn't know anything about Alzheimer's or dementia, but later I found out, it was a small town and everybody had the same doctor. I found out that this person did have, in fact, Alzheimer's and dementia. But what happened is he forgot that he couldn't make a turn. He forgot where he was going and made an illegal turn, and his car was towed, and they took his driver's license away because of that. But I've had friends say to me that they'll start to go, you know, they're gonna go do errands and things, and all of a sudden they blank out, can't remember where they were gonna go.
And also stress. If somebody has that propensity for dementia, stress will make it worse, right? Because you're in the car, you're driving, and all of a sudden you've made a wrong turn, or where am I going? Can't tell you how many times I've heard people say they were here in Santa Barbara, but they ended up down in Downey. You know, or, and I talked to a woman, yeah, the police stopped them because they were totally confused or whatever, and that happened. So, for you guys to understand too, driving is like the biggest thing that we hear about in our support groups. And families have the hardest times because people don't want to stop driving. Why? It's independent. But why is it? Because I asked some people in a support group, why do we put so much as to our driving as our independence? When now there's Uber, there's taxis, there's buses, there's a lot of things that can get us around that can still help us with our independence. So I think sometimes we have to kind of rethink it. Here's another reality. If somebody in your family has dementia, and they're still driving, and they get involved in an accident, and that other person in the other car finds out about it, they can not only sue the person who is driving, they can sue the family. And it has been done in California, and families have been down. And the deal is, you knew that they had dementia, and you allowed them to drive. So you were culpable to that. So it's a matter of trying to kind of navigate And luckily for me, my family, we didn't have to go through that with my mom. My mom, I don't think she really liked driving, she was not the best driver. And then, of course, there was one thing that kind of did it, and that was when she came home from exercise class and she got confused between the brake and the accelerator. Yep, she hit the accelerator, went into the garage at full force, and totally annihilated the washer and dryer. Hit it so hard that she made a perfectly square indentation in the cement wall.
Wow.
And I remember my father calling and telling me what my mother had been up to, and I said, first, is she okay? And it's like, yeah, she's fine. And I said, then now mom's done driving, right, Dad? And he goes, yeah, she's done. Because you don't know. And the thing that is very difficult, I think, is that a lot of people don't know that when you do get that diagnosis with dementia, especially those 4 that I mentioned, it's a terminal illness. And there is no cure. So it's a matter of understanding that and being able to get ready for that. In the way of Alzheimer's, there's now a medication that you can take that can slow the progression, but it has to be in the very early stages, and it has to be Alzheimer's. So, and the only way to find that out is by being tested, is to going in there. The other thing that I've been a huge proponent of is that a lot of the other dementias have a much shorter life expectancy. So being able to get ready and to get your paperwork ready, meaning medical power of attorney, legal power of attorney, if things are coming in the way of pensions and Social Security, can your family have access to that so that they're able to take care of you? And to really start thinking about, okay, how is this gonna move forward? What do we do here as it moves forward? Because unfortunately, Alzheimer's and dementia is one of the most expensive illnesses that you can have. And we have some new statistics, I've got some here. And right now, there are 7.2 million people in the United States that have some form of dementia. So by the time 2050 hits, it's gonna be too much. And we need to change things. That's why a lot of things are being done in Sacramento and a lot of things are being done in Washington. This week, we had Advocacy Day in Washington, so a lot of our volunteers are over in Washington helping to advocate and being able to get more money for the Alzheimer's research and all this kind of stuff, and to be able to get help for caregivers. Because caregivers, if there's 7 million people with dementia, how many caregivers are there?
That's right, yeah.
You know, about 11 million. And it's amazing. And unfortunately, where there's been progress in like heart disease and cancer, there hasn't been a whole bunch for dementia. We're working on it, and we are finding amazing things happening, but it's slow.
You said that the medication has to be started in the very early stages, like how early?
Well, I think that depends on the doctor, because I've heard with some patients when I've talked to their families and they tell me they're on the medication, I'm kind of surprised because the symptoms are they're not in the early stages. So I think doctors are giving it a shot to see if there are, and there has been some success with that. It is an infusion, and there's not a lot of doctors in Santa Barbara who do it. So you have to go down to like UCLA, places like that, where they have bigger infusion and medical centers where they can actually do that.
You said that most people are diagnosed when it's already at stage 3 or 4. Are those considered early stages?
They're considered like early middle stage. So it's a matter of having an idea, but the other thing is too, is that when you're trying to figure out where are we in this, is that you do not go from the time of diagnosis. You have to go when the first symptoms started showing. So when I talked to a family and they said, okay, well, my loved one got diagnosed 5 years ago. I said, okay, let's add 2 years onto that. Because more than likely they were showing signs from that. So now you got 7 years. With Alzheimer's, it's anywhere from 8 to about 15 years life expectancy on average. Yeah, and then the other ones are like 6 to 8. Vascular dementia is 5 years. So it's a matter of figuring that out. But here's the thing. If you have good care, because I saw it with my mother and I've seen it with others, they can last a lot longer. So my mom's journey was about 13 plus years, but she had Alzheimer's, she had frontal temporal lobe, which was 6 to 8 years, and she had vascular, which was 5 years. But she lasted 13
What's
years.
vascular?
Vascular dementia is when you've had little strokes and the dementia will come out of that. So it'll show up in that part of the brain.
So if I want to get that prescription or drip or whatever injection, then I'm saying I feel I have dementia and that's when the doctor can say we're taking away your
You
license?
need to be diagnosed first to be able to get the medication. Because here's the thing, sometimes you can think you're having memory trouble, but what if it's the medications you're taking that's interacting with each other, right? Because there's side effects from the different medications. Also, if you have a vitamin B deficiency, that can cause memory issues. So it's a matter of really figuring it out and being able to diagnose that. Now, you can with a CAT scan and an MRI and the blood test that can help. It's in conjunction with all of that. Also, they do memory tests. If you go to a neurologist, which is what is preferred, and most general practitioners will send you off to a neurologist because they have the background, right? They deal with the brain. And some of them, there's quite a few doctors that I know up here that deal with dementia. So they're out through Samson Clinic. So they will do a more intensive kind of memory test, and those memory tests can be anywhere from 3 to 4 hours. Yeah. So it's thorough.
I can't remember that long.
Will they still trigger dementia?
It can.
What?
Depending on where you had it?
Yes, and that's why understanding, and I see this so much, is that somebody will tell me that their loved one is healthy. They've been diagnosed with dementia. They're healthy. Their blood pressure's great, their cholesterol is terrific, their heart's doing well, and I go, what happened to the dementia? So there is such a disconnect between the neck up and the neck down. But this is what controls everything in the body. So as this starts to progress, you're gonna start having a lot more issues with walking, talking, understanding. 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 4 anymore. You know, they are light sensitive, sound sensitive. They have a depth perception issue. And those can happen in the early stages of dementia, and that depth perception could be problematic. Partly because with depth perception, that's like they may not see a stair, so they can fall. That's what happened with my mom. My parents lived in a 3-story condo. The master bedroom was on the top floor. The carpet was the same color out from the bedroom into the landing and down the stairs. That first step, my mom kept thinking was the landing, so she would hit hard and then she would fall. And then there was one bad fall where she broke her elbow, some other stuff, and my dad said, we're done, we're out of here. So understanding that and having an idea of what you're up against can help you get ready for it. That's why support groups. Santa Barbara, we have quite a few support groups. We have education. That's what we're doing today, is educating you on what are the fundamentals, right? And really understanding that the more you know, the more you're empowered. The more you're gonna be able to have a say as to what you do. Getting your paperwork is so important. Only 25% of Americans have their power of attorney, medical or anything done. 25%. So if you're going to the ER, or you have dementia, you want to be able to have a say in what you want. So having that all done is gonna be to your benefit and it's gonna help your family. Did you have a question?
Did you explain the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's?
So dementia's like the word cancer.
Right.
It's the
Many
umbrella term,
kinds.
right? So Alzheimer's is one form of dementia.
And how does that differ from, like, when someone has Alzheimer's, what is that particular thing that makes it Alzheimer's?
So Alzheimer's has the tau and tangles that multiply in the brain, right? So it makes it harder to function. It starts to break down how the body works. Like with vascular, depending on what part of the brain it's in, you will begin to see where the issues are. Frontal temporal lobe here, but that can be behavior, that can be, and they're more prone to like hallucinations and paranoia. You don't see that so much in Alzheimer's, except maybe towards the end, and that tends to be not a very long thing. But frontal temporal lobe, you could have issues. Lewy body, which is one of the more aggressive type of dementias, can be violent. They can have very aggressive behavior. So it's understanding that you can better get ready for it. Also understanding what it's gonna cost. Because right now, in-home help, somebody having 24-hour care, which is what somebody with dementia is gonna need, is about $30,000 a month. Yeah, and I got that from people who are actually paying that for their 24-hour care. So that's it. So that's why trying to get that early diagnosis, get things ready financially and stuff like that can help you in the long run. Knowing what you're up against can also help you to save money. You know, I mean, right now on average to be able to deal with it, it's like $400,000 through the course of the illness. Not a lot of people have that.
Yeah, since a lot of people don't have that kind of money, what situation
So
are they in?
there is a lot that can be done. There's a lot of organizations in Santa Barbara, in California, that can help you. It's a matter of knowing it and being aware of it. So, Area Agency on Aging, big on being able to help. They have a lot of programs through Medicare and Medi-Cal that can help. The Coast Caregiver Resource Center is another one that they are here based in Goleta. They have wonderful grants. They have a lot of programs that can help you as well. So there is a lot that's here. It's just you need to know about it. And unfortunately with dementia, it can be a very isolating illness because everybody, you kind of get consumed with having to care, not just for the person who has it, but of course for the families that are helping to take care of that person.
Well, these agencies that have help available, is help in the form of money or what?
Some of them are respite grants, that I know Coast Caregiver Resource Center will offer grants. The Friendship Center also has grants. They have the Mary Oakley grant that helps, but you have to, with the Mary Oakley grant, you have to hit the criteria.
But I mean, are there other types of help available besides money?
Well, yes, I mean, there's in-home agencies that can get people to come in and help you in home. There's placement agencies that can help you place your loved one when and if that time comes. The thing that you have to decide is, okay, how is it? How do we want it to go? Because here's the thing, at some point, that loved one is gonna need 24-hour care. And no one person can take care of another human being 24/7. It's not possible.
So what is causing dementia almost, last 40 years or whatever?
So
It's fairly
we're
new.
still trying to figure that out. There's just been, it's been very inclusive in a lot of ways, but we do know that if you do, like having diet is now playing a part, the Mediterranean diet, can do it, exercise can do it. In fact, it can help offset dementia by 40%. So you're talking about that making a huge difference. Using your brain is probably the biggest thing. And that's not something that if you've been doing a crossword puzzle your whole life, that's not gonna challenge your brain. Challenging your brain is you hated cooking for most of your life. Let's take a cooking class. You know, if you've never learned piano, let's do piano. You know, learn a new language. In my case, I started a new job, which was this job, which was totally different from what I was doing. I was managing an interior design shop in Montecito and had been for the last 10 years doing that. And all of a sudden, I'm in a job which was totally alienating to me. But I noticed in the first 2 years how my memory started to improve. I was remembering things better. I was keeping track better. Whereas before, that wasn't happening and I was beginning to get worried because, of course, it was all during the time when my mom was really getting worse and she passed away in '08. So really using your brain, testing it, will help to offset a lot of that. We have more power that's in our hands than we think. Yeah.
I do have a question. On these programs, aren't they income-based? You can't sit in $1 million home?
Not all of it, not all of it. The Mary Oakley grant, yes, is for lower income. But Hilarity for Charity, which is online, that, I'm trying to remember who started that. Seth Rogen started it because of his mother-in-law who had Alzheimer's. So they're not based on income, they're based on need. You know, and the thing is, and I know this, dementia is very expensive. You know, on average, having in-home help, if you're not having 24 hours, on average right now, it's anywhere from like $35 to $40 an hour with a minimum of 4 hours. A lot of them won't do anything less than that. So, exactly. So there are a lot of things. There's also through, I think you can get it through Area Agency on Aging, which their office for Santa Barbara County is based out of Santa Maria. So it's a matter of, so what they offer is HISS, which is where you can be paid to be the caregiver for your loved one. So it's a matter of being able to figure out and knowing what's available and what's out there that can really make a difference.
Is there a list that's condensed that you could go to, or you just have to start looking?
Some of you have to start looking. Right now, we're working on trying to get our resource directory for Santa Barbara County updated. I have volunteers working on that. So pretty soon we'll have that, so you can check.
I'm hearing more and more that taking a statin makes things worse. So what do you mean? Taking what?
I don't know enough about that to make it, but I think it's a conversation that you have with your doctor. And part of it is too, is that, here's the thing, you may not get dementia, you know? So taking the statins will be perfectly healthy. It's a matter of weighing what the benefits and not benefits. If you already have dementia, this is where it starts to get into a lot of gray areas, right? And it's personal, quality of life versus the quantity of life.
What part is genetics? Like my mother had Alzheimer's.
It's certainly, when I first started looking, there wasn't a lot out there, but there's more and more where it's running in families.
Okay.
So, and there is a blood test that I don't know if that's been okayed yet, but you can take a blood test to find out whether or not you have the propensity for it.
I don't wanna know.
That is a personal thing, and everybody, has to have that thought. It's like when the first medication came out, I remember I was facilitating a support group for people with dementia. And we talked about, okay guys, here's the new medication, you know, that can help slow the progression, and I was shocked that the group was not for it. They said, why would we wanna prolong it? Why would we wanna do that for ourselves? Why would we wanna do that for our loved ones? But people do, you know, and if it gives you a little bit more time in those early stages to have a quality of life, why not, you know?
What's the leading national institution or organization that's doing research?
The Alzheimer's Association.
Right.
We are the largest, we're under the country of China and the country of the United States as the leading funder of research in the world. So every year we have an international conference, which is gonna be coming up at the end of July. This year it's gonna be in Toronto. And all these people converge on there from all over the world and discuss what are the new things that we're learning.
My other question is, I've had an ex-husband, a mother-in-law, 2 cousins with early onset, and friends that have had mothers, and every single incident was a lot of worry and a lot of fear. That's what started the shutdown. And I'm wondering if there's been research on early attachment and the emotion of fear and worry that runs havoc with not our brain, but our heart.
Well, but that kind of worry and stuff, that can affect anything. That can affect your heart, that can affect not just dementia. But I think, let's face it, we as human beings or anybody who is a living organism or whatever, we're gonna die. And we don't deal with death or dying in the United States. We are really bad at that. And we don't talk about that. We don't allow our anxieties and our fears about that to come to the forefront. And I think we need to do more of that. In my group, I facilitate a support group in Ventura, and we talk about that because I bring it up. You know, it's like we are all faced with that, but we don't talk about it. And we don't talk about it with each other. You know, it's like when I ask questions about, okay, do you as spouses talk to your other spouse about what do you want if something happens? What are your hopes? What would you like to be in the way of care? I am shocked at how many couples don't talk about that until it's too late.
Until it hits. And
Yeah.
a great book is Death and Dying by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She is wonderful,
Yep.
and everyone should read that.
Oh yeah, she was the mother of that.
I think another issue that Alzheimer's have is talking to your children. Because they do not, and my children think I'm gonna live forever, you know? It's like I thought Frank Sinatra was gonna live forever. My children think I'm gonna live forever. And when I try to talk to them about the things that I'm doing to make it easier for them, you know, if I got hit by a car, if I had a heart attack and died tonight, it's all done. All they have to do is go in and open the folders and take care of it. They don't wanna hear it.
I know.
They go, you're fine, you're fine.
But you have to kind of push it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I was lucky with my mom because, well, with both my parents, because we talked about it throughout my life. We had a lot of death in our family, with people very young and at all ages in all different ways. So these were conversations that we had around the dinner table, so that by the time it came when my mom started really seeing signs, in fact, she wanted to end it very quickly, and asked me to help her to do that. And I told her, I'm sorry, Mom, I can't do that. I can't. I said, but I will promise you that we will do no heroics. And when that time comes, we will let you go. And she says, as God is your witness, and I go, as God is my witness, Mom.
I also want to thank you very much because a number of years ago, I'm a journalist and I was invited to cover a dinner that was given down at the Four Seasons. It's down, one of the suburbs down that way. And a man spoke about the fact that his wife has Alzheimer's and she's been in a home for many years. You probably know him. He built the gym in this town where he lives and he's very generous to Alzheimer's. But it made me so aware of this illness and how powerful it can be, and the spirit of human beings, because what this man was saying was, he married her for life, and he will be with her for life, and she's really, gone. I get pictures and stuff from him on Facebook, and I also wanna thank you for honoring Rona Barrett, because I have known Rona for a long, long time. I mean, she was a dynamite little broad in Hollywood.
She sure was.
And I met her 25 years ago when she started doing the lavender products. I was a editor of a food and beverage magazine, and I drove up here for the first time, and I was like, my God, where does this woman live? I'm never gonna get here. It's like, this is crazy. She was in Buellton, right? And I had the most wonderful meeting with her, because mostly what she talked about was her dream to build these homes for seniors and help them, and what she had gone through with her father, who had Alzheimer's. So I was at that event that you gave for her, and I just thank you so much.
You're
because
welcome.
She was thrilled to death. She really was thrilled to
I
death.
know, she was quite the lady.
I would just like to mention that there is a group in town called the Death Cafe that meets, once a month at the First Congregational Church from 3:30 to 5. It's meeting tomorrow afternoon, and everyone's invited. There's no charge. You can give a donation if you like, but it's good. I've been going to that sometimes. It's really interesting.
That's Arlene's stepmom. She's the doctor.
I was with someone
Yeah.
recently and I could
Have you
see
been there? Yeah,
signs,
that's good. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I don't know what our responsibility is. When they say things like, oh, did we pick you up at the airport and she drove 5 hours for me? It's like, no. And what is our duty? It's not family, so I'm not gonna get sued, but I feel like I should be able to do something.
No, sometimes maybe talking to them, depending on what your relationship is, or talking to their kids and saying, I've kind of noticed a change in your mom. Have you noticed that too? I'm just a little concerned, because sometimes, like you said, kids don't necessarily want to hear it or even deal with it. My brothers were very resistant to realizing what was going on with our mom. And that made it hard, but then I started thinking about it, it's like, you know what? They're over the age of 21. Oh no, wait a minute, they're over the age of 31. I don't have to be their babysitter anymore as to what was happening. So I backed off, and I knew with how the disease worked, that at some point they're gonna come to the party. Because there is not gonna be any way that they're gonna get away from that. So it's a matter of kind of picking an opportunity, if one comes up, and it's like, maybe you just kind of say, I've kind of been noticing some things. It can be very subtle, it doesn't have to be that hard-hitting thing of trying to make that change, right? It's a matter of just saying, I've been concerned. Because sometimes it could be, again, medication, it could be any number of things. So it's maybe going to the doctor and getting a checkup. Because especially if they live alone, it gets harder.
Referring back to the cost of things, do you find that when they have a person coming in 24 in your home, comparing to a regular institution that has just Alzheimer's patients, the cost-wise, what would be the difference, if there is any? And for the person themselves, what do you think is better for them? Stay at home and have the 24, or go into another situation?
Okay, so personal, because it really is a personal decision, but from my years of doing this and seeing it with my mother, one, it's more cost-effective placing, because you can get a really nice place up to like $10,000 a month that takes care of everything, versus that $30,000 is only to bring in that in-home help. That's not doing the laundry, food, medicine, taking care of the home. So that $10,000, that encompasses all of that. And you can get very good care, and it's 24-hour care. So there's that component, right? Now the other component is that as the dementia begins to progress, the person with dementia, their life gets much more contained, and they need to be on a more diligent schedule. It's what helps them to feel a little bit more safe and secure. So that means breakfast is at 7, lunch is at noon, dinner's at 5. Hard to do at home because life is not in a schedule. But in those places, the memory care or assisted living facilities, they do have to go it that way. It's the only way they can be run is on that schedule. That helps to make that person with dementia feel that safe and secure. I remember one time, because my mom was in an assisted living facility, and we went to go visit her one time, and it was my dad and I, my 2 youngest brothers, and their wives. And we were there, I don't even think we were there an hour. And then when we got up to leave, I turned to blow my mom a kiss and to say goodbye, and she was sitting in her wheelchair doing this. I was not happy because I was driving clear down from Santa Barbara, because I was living here at the time, to go visit her in Woodland Hills. So that was quite the round trip drive for my mother to be so happy to see the back of us. And then I started thinking about it, it's like, oh, wait a minute, it's too much, okay? Even 6 people that were all relatives, it was too much. Even though it was just an hour, it was too much. So understanding that as the disease progresses, things are gonna change. And it's gonna get harder for them to follow. Families love talking over each other, through each other, around, you know, I mean, that's just the nature of it. And talking about plans and doing things and trips, of which somebody with dementia can no longer do. So it does, in a way, kind of make it a little easier when they are placed. It just makes it safer.
What information do you have about the effectiveness of supplements to stave off and support your cognitive health? Like, I've heard about 2 in particular, magnesium and is it omegas, like fish oil? Do you have, I know this is a health-related issue.
It is, and I don't know too much about it. I think that there's still a lot of research that needs to be done to finalize all that, but we know that those help other issues, and that especially with magnesium, because I was just reading about magnesium this morning, so it does so much in the body, and it's important for all functions, for bone, for how your nerve endings, things like that. So it can't hurt, but I don't know how much it does in the way of dementia.
So I want to ask a question on the same line. We're reading a lot about HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and for years we've been told as women, oh, you've got cancer, we're not going to put you on HRT, and now that whole cancer thing has been debunked, and I'm just wondering, I even heard of a client's family told me that in her 80s, the client who has dementia was just placed on HRT, and it's made a difference for her. And I just wonder, is the Alzheimer's Association working on that information?
I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if we were. So and a lot of it's probably still preliminary, but so much of it is having to make that decision for yourself. It's like going on to the anti-anxiety, antipsychotic medication that we are putting people with dementia because of the hallucinations and the paranoia and stuff, but we do know that that can shorten their life by taking it. But then it's waning, they're already dying. If that medication helps, I mean, because that's what we did with my mom. We put her on that because she was having horrible hallucinations. She was having paranoia, although my mother was always paranoid. But it just made things a little bit worse. So it got things a lot easier to do. So I think you have to weigh what is the quality of life versus the quantity. And that's very much of a personal, individual thing.
If somebody does have dementia, is there something that you can give them and help calm them a little bit?
Oh, yeah, there's definitely medication to talk to your doctor about that, and then they'll be able to prescribe that.
Just back to the guiding thing. Did you say that the doctor has to let them know about DMD? when you first ask them to test them? Or
No.
did they wait till the test?
Till the
comes positive?
diagnosis comes. If when they're diagnosed, that the doctor is supposed to notify the DMV.
Oh, I see.
But not all doctors do, and here's the thing too, DMV is very inconsistent.
To say the least.
So I've heard where some people have gone and taken the test and passed, and even though they have dementia, and they have been renewed for their driver's license. Then I've heard other families that have gone, they didn't get renewed, or they sent a letter out to let them know too. And the other thing is too, to be aware, just one more thing, is that the insurance, when the DMV cancels the driver's license, they sometimes will notify your insurance company.
Oh.
So you need to double check that happens, that the insurance, because sometimes the insurance company will not notify the person that their insurance has been canceled. So it's your due diligence to make sure that everything is covered.
Thank you, Jordana.